Hey, mama. So today we are talking about the number one type of content every mompreneur needs to build a profitable business from home. And I'm just going to tell y'all what it is. It is long form content. And so in this episode, we're really going to be diving into why long form content is a type of content you need to be including in your content strategy as a business owner, as a busy mama, and all of that. But before we get into today's episode, I really want to share this email that I got from one of my listeners. And so it's from, her name is Denise. And it says, I found your podcast just over a year ago due to my need to get back in touch with people I hold dear to me. Women who are stay-at-home moms and also those who are homeschooling their children. You speak and pour such care, wisdom, and genuine time into complete strangers, yet common roots, and I felt so drawn to continue listening. As a woman who just turned 60, a former homeschooling parent, and a higher education administrator, I found that you and your business emulate a system and process that has an outcome of creative, critical thinking, and masterful human beings. Essentially, they are change agents for their communities and beyond. Parents just like me are grateful you are in the entrepreneurial space and bringing your wisdom, kindness, and joyful attitude to all you do. To that, I say thank you. Thank you so much, Denise, for this email. Like, it really lit up my day. And I love that you listen to the podcast. Like, thank you so much. So just wanted to share that with you guys. But all right, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, mama. Are you tired of feeling stressed and overwhelmed trying to grow your online business with your babies at home? You desire more flexibility in your day, allowing you to pour into your family, yourself, and your business without running yourself into the ground. Mama, you can build your dream business and do it in a way that fits your current season of life. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Welcome to the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Andria Singletary, daughter of the king, wife, mama of two, and life and business coach for mompreneurs. On this podcast, you will learn business strategies made for mamas just like you, who desire to be successful CEOs and fully present mamas without stress or overwhelm. So whether you're an entrepreneur who transitioned to a mompreneur or a mama turned mompreneur, I am here to support you. So grab your coffee, notebook, and pen, put in those earbuds, and let's dig in. All right, y'all, we are talking about long form content. Now, if you aren't familiar with long form content, or maybe you've heard of it referred to as evergreen content, but basically there are three types of long form content: podcasts, like the one you're listening to, blogs, and then YouTube. So those are your long form content. And basically, long form content, it's like what it says. It's longer content, right? So like my podcast episodes, that's much longer content than compared to something like you post on Instagram or Facebook, different things like that. Blogs, those are much longer too. And there are 4 reasons why you need this as a mompreneur. So the first reason is that searchability purposes. So searchability refers to how easily someone can find known information through searching or browsing. So for instance, your ideal client types a specific question in Google related to your niche, how you help. And the thing is like, does your long form content come up in the top results? So does your podcast episode, does your blog, does your YouTube? So that's what it means like when it comes to searchability. You want to make sure that you are using keywords that your ideal clients are searching related to your niche, related to what it is that you do, how you can support them. So if your long form content is like a podcast or a YouTube channel, are you coming up as recommended when your ideal client is searching content specific to your niche or listening to another podcast that may be within a similar niche as yours? That's one of the things I love about Apple Podcasts is that when you really, grow your podcast and you're, leveraging SEO, your podcast can come up as a recommended podcast. And this has happened for my podcast. I've even had guests benefit from this. So Alex Edwards, she was back on the podcast. Oh my gosh. I want to say it was like episode 78, 79. I will link it in the show notes. But she had shared the first time she was on the podcast, which was episode 24, I believe. She had landed a client from her interview on my podcast. And how that client found her was that she was listening to another podcast that was talking about Squarespace websites. And then my podcast, the interview that I did with Alex, showed up as a recommended episode. And so she went and listened to that episode, fell in love with Alex, reached out to her, and decided to work with her. So that's what you want. That's related to that searchability piece. That's really leveraging SEO through long form content. Another thing with searchability is it's really great for organic traffic. And so it's a really good way to attract your ideal clients. So people are literally searching Google for answers to questions you have the solution for. And so when you're leveraging long form content and you're making sure that it is highly searchable, you are going to attract people who are ready to invest because you have the solution to their problem. They know they have a problem. They just need to find the right person to help them. And so again, that searchability piece is huge for that. Leveraging keywords and SEO to ensure that you are attracting the right people. You are driving that traffic to your website, to your podcast, to, your blog, those different things. And so, like I've been saying, this is where that SEO piece comes in. You want to make sure you're doing your keyword research regardless of which long form content you create. So regardless if it's YouTube, a podcast, or a blog, and incorporating those keywords where they need to go. So I am hosting the 7-day potlatch Get It Done week this month. We start January 22nd. And this is something that we are going to be diving into because you can create a podcast, but if you aren't using keywords, if you aren't using the right keywords, your podcast is not going to be found by the people you want it found by, right? And so that is why this is something we are covering in the Get It Done week. We are taking that time to really focus in on SEO. So focusing on the SEO of your podcast title. And I will be showing you where to incorporate those keywords in your show notes, in your episode description, all of that. So if you want that, if you know that podcasting is for you and you are ready to add long form content in 2024, then you need to head on over to mompreneur.com/getitdone and grab your spot for the Get It Done week. It is limited spots, but I will be hosting this quarterly. But after this first round, the price is going to go up. So hop in while you can at this price. Okay, so searchability was the first reason why you want to add long form content to your content strategy, to your business as a mompreneur. The next reason is content repurposing. Now, I have talked about content repurposing on the podcast before. I've even had Emily Aborn on the podcast to talk about it. So if you want to learn a little bit more about content repurposing, you can check out episodes 58 and 65. But just to share a little bit about it, it saves you so much time when you repurpose your content. So if you think about it, you have to create content for your business, right? And depending on how you are showing up, how you're creating content for your business, when you have a piece of long form content, it can simplify all of that for you. So for instance, I will take my podcast episodes and I will pull out main points from it and I will repurpose it for an email to my list. I even like with my show notes for my podcast, I now, I write a bit more with them and kind of flesh them out a little bit more and kind of use them in a sense as a blog to drive more organic traffic to my website. So it really helps you with all of that. Like I'm not having to sit here and try to come up with new content for every platform I'm on. And so think about it this way. Our time is so valuable, right? Time is definitely money. Like we don't have time to waste. And so if there is a way to simplify content creation, simplify that content creation process, that is going to give you so much more time freedom. And that's what we need as mamas, right? Like our time is limited, our capacity is limited. And so, taking those main points from your long form content, whether it's a blog, whether it's your podcast, whether it's YouTube, and just pulling out those main points and turning it into another piece of content. So this will be really big for those of you who want to be active on social media. You can cut down that content creation process for social media by repurposing your long form content. And I will say the biggest thing with content repurposing and how it really benefits you as a business owner is that it creates a cohesiveness in your messaging. And it ensures that your audience is exposed to your message in the format that they learn best. So sometimes we can really get in our heads about content repurposing, like, oh, I'm saying the same thing over and over again. My audience is going to notice and they're going to get bored with it, or I'm going to feel like they're going to feel like I'm being redundant. No, that podcast episode, they may have missed it that week. So they're getting it in your email content, or maybe they didn't read your email, but they're listening to the podcast. Or maybe they didn't see that post on Instagram, so they're catching it on the podcast or via email. But it's basically people have to see the same message over and over again in order to take that next step to buy. So this is ensuring that your messaging is clear, it's concise, it is the same across all platforms. And so content repurposing, it really supports you with that. Okay, so the next thing is that your long form content can serve as multiple steps in your funnel. So just to use my podcast as an example, my podcast generates new leads for me monthly. It brings in new listeners monthly. It also nurtures my current listeners. It allows them to get to know me better. It allows them to learn from me, and I'm earning your guys' trust, right? And then it also converts my listeners into my paid offers and programs. So your long form content can do that for you. It can literally bring in new leads while also nurturing your current audience, while also those people who are hot leads, converting them into the paid offer that is right for them. And just to talk a little bit about that conversion part, this is why I'm really big on selling on your podcast. Because if you don't sell, you're not going to convert, because they're not going to know, okay, how can I work with you? How can you help me? So that's why you should be selling in your content, like your podcast, or if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a blog, you need to be selling. Okay, so that I think that is huge right there. That is another reason why I love podcasting, because this podcast does all of that for me without me having to show up online daily. It's such a beautiful thing. It simplifies my content creation. I'm not having to, hop in stories every day or create new content for social media and all of that. My content, my podcast content, it does it all for me. So if that's something you want, if podcasting is for you, you need to hop on that Get It Done week. The link is down below in the description, so you can join us. We get started January 22nd. Okay, so the last reason why you want to have long form content as part of your marketing strategy, your content strategy, as a mompreneur is that long form content has longevity. It has a way, 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 way longer shelf life than social media. Social media posts have a shelf life of anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. This is another reason why you have to churn out so much content to yield the results you desire on social media. If you look at probably some of your favorite entrepreneurs who they rely heavily on social media, they post daily, they post multiple times a day, but it's like different types of content. They'll do stories, they'll do a feed post, and they'll do reels, all of that. And it's because they have to stay top of mind. And in order to do that on a social media platform, you have to churn out more content because it has such a short shelf life. Your long form content, people can discover your long form content and like discover a blog post, a podcast episode, a YouTube video that you created weeks, months, even years after. As long as it's still relevant, people will find it. So if you think about it, as a mama, we want content that's going to continue to work for us even after we hit publish on it. We want content that doesn't require us to have to show up daily in order for it to work for us. I've had people recently find my podcast and they told me I binged all 100 and something episodes in a few days, in a week. Nobody is going to go to your Instagram and scroll all the way back to your very first social media post. And I think that's also like, this is a complete side note, forgive me. With social media, I find it so frustrating to know like, okay, I'm going to put out this piece of content. Man, if like people don't see it and weeks and so go by, like that's a really good piece of content that's just sitting there on my page that people may never see. Now, of course, you can do certain things, reshare it, all of that. But like compared to long form content, when people are looking for an answer to a specific question and you're leveraging that SEO and your content comes out, up on the first page of Google, it doesn't matter that that content was published 2 months ago or even 6 months ago. As long as it's still relevant, it's going to work for you. But social media doesn't work that way, right? Like I've never had this happen. Like I'm searching on Google. I haven't had somebody's social media post come up. Now, their social media page may come up if they're using the right keywords for like their name and in their bio, but I've never like searched on Google and somebody's social media post came up. So that's just something to think about. So again, just as a quick recap, the 4 reasons why you want to have long form content in your business as a mompreneur are searchability purposes, content repurposing. It can serve as multiple steps in your funnel, so it can do the lead generation, nurturing, and converting, and content longevity. It has a very long shelf life. So as a reminder, if you are like, podcasting is for me, I am ready to launch my podcast and have podcasting be part of my long form content in 2024, go grab your spot for the first Get It Done week at mompreneur.com/get it done. This will also be linked below in the episode description and in the show notes. All right, Mama, I'll catch you in the next episode. Well, Mama, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a review? Hitting that follow button and sharing your thoughts about the podcast are the best ways to ensure that other mamas like you find this show. Your review also lets me know if you're enjoying this podcast, so make sure to share your thoughts before you go. All right, Mama, I'll catch you in the next episode.